Hello and welcome you crazy people. My name is Jay and we're going to be asking two key questions today. Will Tabletop Simulator for Star Wars Legion be banned? And then the next question to that is, should it be banned? So there's two very distinct questions there. And the reason that I'm asking the first one, at least, is whether or not it will be banned, is because of this news, which is Asmodee. Don't know why I said it like that. Asmodee, they have bought the board game arena, which is basically I've never used it myself, but from what I can work out, it's a browser-based board game thing, which is very similar to, say, like Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia, right? They've bought it. Now, there's questions about what will happen to the board games that are from different publishers and stuff like that, but I'm not really here to talk about that. But because Tabletop Simulator essentially then becomes a direct competitor, alarm bells in one sense are ringing in my head saying, well, one, these games by FFG or Atomic Mass Games, they need the 3D elements, so they're not necessarily going to fit well on this system. And then two, will Asmodee now try and take their games off the other platforms, right? And if they do that and games like Legion aren't transitioned over, maybe they get when I say they aren't transitioned over, obviously we have to keep in mind that Star Wars Legion in itself isn't officially supported by Asmodee or Atomic Mass Games or FFG, even though I think Atomic Mass Games may have ran like a Marvel Crisis Protocol tournament, but officially it's generally like hush hush because they're using models. The creators of the game, the creators of the mod, are using models that aren't owned by them. They're using like Star Wars IP. It's not officially supported, so at any point they could get the ban hammer. Now, will they start going after the games that aren't going to be a good fit on Board Game Arena? I don't know. Will they even remove their games from the other formats, from the other competitors like Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia? I have no idea. Obviously it's as simple as that. That's the premise of the video, of the why it might get knocked off. It's very speculative, as I'm sure you could appreciate, but if you are buying one sort of semi-competitor, probably because it's not 3D, you could argue it's the worst one. But because they are now a direct competitor to these other systems, anything that's using their games that isn't through something they're selling as DLC on those platforms, because I think they probably do sell games and DLCs on those platforms. I presume they would have to be like still supported for the people who've bought them, kind of thing. But to be fair, I don't know if Asmodee actually do that, but Scythe and other games are on Tabletop Simulator. So but let's presume that they then say anything that's not officially released from us, well, we're not going to want it on Tabletop Simulator, are we? That doesn't seem like it would make any sense. So let's take everything off. That could leave games like Star Wars Legion, Marvel Crisis Protocol in a weird place, because they obviously don't really fit on the Board Game Arena 2D based kind of thing. So I can envision a world in which those get removed just as sort of like a casualty, like an unintended casualty of the effect of them buying this, right? I don't mean to like ring alarm bells, but I could see that happening. Now, we all know that the companies like FFG and Atomic Mass Games, they know of Tabletop Simulator, but they can never like officially really reveal that. At least FFG couldn't, especially for Star Wars. They couldn't act like they knew about it, because I remember somebody, and I won't reveal names because I don't want to like call them out, but somebody was asking them about them on the stream and they're like, well, we didn't hear that question, because they have to ignore it. So could it get removed? Yes. Will it get removed? I've no idea. There's generally been a policy from them to be like, we're going to pretend it's not a thing and just let you crack on. And Games Workshop, on the other hand, have removed certain mods in the past. They're a bit more protective of their IPs like that. So that's the thing. That could be the end of the video. However, I want to talk about whether or not it should be banned. Now, this would be a more controversial subject. Now, let me say, this would be the worst timing for like something like Star Wars Legion to get banned off Tabletop Simulator. Because I don't know if you've noticed the world situation going on right now, but it's not conducive to in-person gaming. But in one sense, that factor actually, I was going to make this kind of video regardless of whether or not it could have been banned, because for me, it's given me a realization that I like the in-person nature of the hobby. Not painting miniatures or anything like that. I like the gaming in person, because quite frankly, if I want to play computer games, I will play computer games, right? It's as simple as that, if you will. There was a book, I think it's called Bowling Alone. I've not read it, I just read the synopsis, and it's talking about how technology has basically divided people, and the more activities are becoming more individual. So it was like radio and TV maybe were a little bit more social, and then it was talking about how in bowling in America, people were now not bowling in leagues as much, but bowling was going up. I actually think people were probably just bowling in social groups as like an activity, but whatever. And they were talking about how VR, this was in 1990 odd or whatever, they were talking about how VR will be another step of people's individual entertainment just becoming just about individuals. And that got me thinking whether like what I actually really, it sounds really like philosophical, but it got me thinking like, why am I even playing war games? It's not because it's on a digital version of it. I have no qualms with digital versions of the games. In the past, I've spoken about how I like the Tabletop Simulator mod and stuff like that, but it got me thinking, is what I'm trying to say. So whether it shouldn't be banned now, it would be a disaster. It probably shouldn't be banned full stop. But I could make a slight argument for it to be banned, if that makes sense. But it's not one that I would necessarily subscribe to. So, I mean, let's talk about it. So you've got the reasons, the pros for people. You can try things before you buy them. Great. You don't actually have to pay. That's bad if you own the rights and stuff like that. Quite frankly, it's sometimes quicker. The game itself might be a bit slower, but if you don't have to travel to the game and stuff like that, you know, it can be a little bit quicker. It also means that maybe for the companies, if they pay attention to it, that there's more data to balance, because you've got more pro play. It's generally the better players who are playing on this kind of thing as well. I'm looking at some notes if you're wondering. And the downside, I think, would possibly be that the top players get more better. Because, right, so let's say you don't have Tabletop Simulator or anything like that. Let's say you have you just have your country, the people in your local area. Generally, you won't have like the world champion living down your street, and you won't necessarily be able to play the second best, the third best, the fourth best, the fifth best in the world. You're just playing the people who are around, and you just try and play them as much as you can to get better. Right, so the fact that if you were one of the top players, you could basically work your way up, get friendly with the top players in the world because you become so good and you're winning the online events and stuff like that, that you become into that society and stuff like that. So I think you could argue that it makes the best players even better, but all I think would really happen is that you end up with there's possibly a greater disparity between the people who do play on Tabletop Simulator who are trying to be good versus the people who aren't playing on Tabletop Simulator who are trying to be good. But there's probably not many people who aren't, because it's not that expensive. It's not that much difficult to get into, and it doesn't really hurt that many people, right? If anything, the only people it would hurt would be people like myself who sort of want to be competitive, but I don't want to play Tabletop Simulator. But I wouldn't try and push for it to be banned because I don't like it. Do you know what I mean? I appreciate that it's a logical thing and people enjoy it. So I would never try and say you shouldn't do this because it hurts me. The people people are already better than me. I'm fairly sure that I've gone to tournaments with people who don't play Tabletop Simulator and they thrash me. You know what I mean? It's not really the be all and the end all. But I do think like at the very top end at Worlds, all the people who end up being there when we get there probably all know each other from playing on Tabletop Simulator, and it just makes sense. So, I mean, there's another argument about the meta, because we get the way that FFG were at least doing their products is that you could basically play with 80% of what was available, of the units that were coming out. So the meta was like very quickly and strongly defined. Even before it'd come out, and then once it has come out, there's a lot more games being played because it's a little bit easier to play, that the meta is so well defined. And I think the meta would still be a thing, but the meta might be a bit slower if you don't have lots of games being played on Tabletop Simulator. Yeah, it is what it is. I don't really have necessarily a big problem with that. There would still be a meta. It would maybe just be a bit slower to be found, and the fixes would maybe be a bit slower. But yeah, it's just coming out of the well, I say coming out of it with no idea, but I just think the bowling alone thing got me thinking about it. This article has got me thinking about it, and coming out of when we actually go to a tournament next, which I'm not trying to say when that will be, I'm probably going to be playing against people who've been playing for 12 to 18 months. Whereas I've literally not played. My last game was probably February last year, so it's literally now been a year since I played Star Wars Legion, because I'm not playing on Tabletop Simulator. So people are going to have like a year's worth of experience and advantage and stuff like that. So it's just a bit of a, I don't want to say a sore point for me, but it just got me thinking. It wouldn't do any good in terms of PR. It would be an absolute disaster, especially the fact that it's just gone to Atomic Mass Games. They don't want to be seen as the bad guys because people are already like concerned, if you want to say it like that. So I don't think now would be a great time to do it, but it's something I think we have to be aware now that Asmodee have a very real competitor in the online space, which by the way makes complete sense for Asmodee to do that. Like, obviously the pandemic has obviously shown that a backup and a digital sphere is definitely a good thing, and I do think you could make an argument for TTS to be banned for like Legion, but you wouldn't want to do that now, and it's probably not that big of a bad thing. Like, the only argument I can really see to ban it would be the fact that the meta would maybe be a little bit slower to be defined, but all that means is that the really top players would probably find it a bit sooner and be able to abuse it a bit more, rather than have all the information and have it get fixed quicker. So I don't really think it would make that big of a difference. The top players, like, the people in the UK like Ellis and Nicky and stuff like that, they would play, well, they played a lot on TTS and they played a lot in person. I didn't have that dedication to it, do you know what I mean? So the really top players are going to play a lot of games anyway. The other argument would be that they can play the better players in the world. Like, Ellis can play the better players in the US. They can all get increase the level. But that's, like, it's not even like there was a big barrier to entry for Tabletop Simulator. So it's just personal preference and enjoyment. For me, I deliberately started doing this channel with my wife, who's we have a baby now, so she's not interested. But we started doing this channel to get away from the computer and stuff like that. And really, that's actually what I want to keep doing. And obviously, this current situation in the world is making that difficult. But that's, for me, what I want to do. The fact that people are doing it online doesn't necessarily affect me unless I go to tournaments and I get beat by them. But they probably would have beat me anyway. So it's a very like meh kind of topic. But there's a real chance that it could happen. I don't want to like scaremonger, but there is a real chance. I appreciate that people have probably been playing Tabletop Simulator in lockdown, and it's been a godsend. I think everybody appreciates that. I'm talking more about if anything bad should happen and it gets removed, it should obviously be before lockdown. Don't think it should be removed, so I don't know why I would even make that caveat. Have a most beautiful day.